Greetings, this is Salam with another demo of the GReasy Graphics Library, and in this video I'll be demonstrating the scrolling functionality of the library. So let's start by going into Greasel, our drawing program, and I have prepared a frame set for this demo, which is basically some simple arrows. Got a left and right arrow and up and down arrow and some nice bright contrasting colors, so very simple. And we'll drop to basic here, and since this frame set is still in memory, we can go ahead and use our recall ampersand command to pull it up. So there's frames 1 and 2, which are the horizontal arrows, and then frames 3 and 4 are our vertical arrows. So I've prepared a simple scrolling demo to show this here. So there is the horizontal scrolling with the arrows, and I'm using the joystick as an input, and it's controlling the velocity of the scrolling as I move the joystick back and forth. And then so when we swing to one direction, and the frame will wrap to itself. Swing the other direction, same thing will happen until we go back to that center point there. And so the resolution and with horizontal scrolling is 1 pixel. There's 1 pixel right there. Vertical, it's 2. We'll go into that in a second here. But basically, let's look at how this is accomplished. So we'll drop to basic, and let's just take a quick look at the program code. We're going to go into this a little more depth a little later. So this is the initial setup. The lines to pay attention to are line 40. Starting at line 40, we have our the direction that we're scrolling. That's the actual function code that gets passed to the library. In this case, 3 means horizontal scrolling, 4 is vertical scrolling. Then we have our scroll resolution. Now I mentioned that in vertical mode we only we have the minimum resolution, or scrolling can only be done in 2 pixel increments, so 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. And the reason for that is a bit beyond the scope of this video, but suffice it to say that it was a little bit more challenging to implement that. It'll be slower, and I was running out of room with the code library as it is. The library takes up half a K, and I wanted to keep it to that those constraints, and so that'll wait for version 2 to do 1 pixel resolution in the vertical orientation. So anyway, we have in line 60 our origin frame and our wrap frame, what I call the origin frame and wrap frame. So that's the 2 frames that the scrolling is going to take place between. And so if you have a multitude of frames, an array of frames, then you would scroll between, and let's say they were a sequence of a world, a horizontal scrolling world or a vertical scrolling world, whatever you have. You would specify, depending on where the player is in the game, either from frame 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, etc. And so because the scrolling is actually implemented, it's manually controlled, which I'll demonstrate here in a bit. And then we have our joystick access, and we have a joystick resolution. That's basically a divisor. The value that's read from the joystick is going to be divided by that value, and that controls the velocity input. Since in vertical scrolling mode we're scrolling at a 2 pixel resolution, we need to change that in order to keep it from scrolling crazily. So here's the code to actually read the joystick. It's a main loop that reads the joystick. You can see there at line 110 we read the axis of the joystick. Lines 120 and 130 create a delta value, and then the rest of the code is actually, this is way more complicated than I initially thought it would be to implement this. But anyway, here's the actual library call. Now the ampersand commands for scrolling are still under development, so I don't have those ready yet. But we access the library instead using pokes and calls, which is the traditional way to do it. And also, if you were to compile your program using a basic compiler, you would have to go and change all your ampersand commands to pokes and calls anyway, because that would be, the compiler wouldn't be able to recognize the ampersand commands. So in this case, we're using the direct access to the library. So location 6 is the function that we want to execute. So in this case, we're doing scrolling, so that's either going to be 3 or 4. If we wanted to draw, that would be function code 1. If we wanted to undraw, that's function code 2. So now in location 7, we put our origin frame. So that's the frame that we're scrolling from. And at location 8, we're putting our offset, how far into the frame, either the column or the row, that we are starting from to draw it. And then location 9 has the wrap frame, or the frame that will be wrapped into or scrolled into. So to give a demonstration of how this actually works, make sense of it, let's go into graphics mode, and let's set up our registers. So we'll tell it we want to scroll horizontally. So that's location 6 gets a 3. We want to specify our origin frame. So location 7 gets a 1. Our origin frame is 1. Let's start with a offset of 0, because that will mean, let's paint the screen first with the first frame in its entirety. And then we have to specify our wrap frame, which is going to be frame 2. So we're going to wrap into frame 2. And then we call the library, which is at location 33280. And so there we have our full frame of the arrow, because the offset, again, is 0. So that means it's going to start at column 0 of this frame and go all the way across 40 columns. And then if it needs to wrap, or if it needs to scroll or wrap, in this case it will go to the next frame specified, but in this case it finished before it had to do that. So let's change the offset so we'll get a scrolling effect. So in the offset we'll put a value of 10, and then we'll call the library, and now we have scrolled over to the left by 10 pixels. And so let's put a value of 20 there instead, call the library, and now the frame has scrolled over 20 pixels. So as you can see, the scrolling is actually controlled manually, which makes sense when you're actually programming, because you want to be able to determine where you are between the frames based on where your player is in the world or whatever you're doing. And so we can scroll further, call the library to affect that, and of course we can also go backwards, and we can let's put this in a loop to show how this would look in a loop. So we'll poke 8 with the variable there, call our library, and there you have it. And then we can go in reverse, poke 8 with the offset, call our library, and there we go, scrolling in the other direction. So now let's go to our program again, and let's convert this to vertical scrolling. So let's change our function code to 4 for vertical scrolling, and we'll just nuke the comments for now. And our scroll resolution will be 20 in this case. And our origin frame is going to be 3. We're going to start with frame 3, and we're going to wrap into frame 4. So origin frame 3, wrap frame 4. Let's change our joystick axis to the vertical axis. And we need to change this resolution value to 32 so it doesn't scroll out of control. So now we are ready to run this. And there we have it. Now we're scrolling vertically. And so this is, let's get into that's 2 pixel scrolling right there. And there's maximum scrolling. So there you have it. A nice demo of the scrolling functionality of the GReasy Graphics Library. I hope you enjoyed that.